I don't remember the sound of my own footsteps that day. All I remember is the way my heart stopped clean, cold, like someone had pressed a palm straight into my chest when I saw her across the farmer's market. Claire, my ex-wife, my mistake, and the child I'd convinced myself wouldn't exist, growing right there beneath her dress. Unmistakable, undeniable. 6 months. 6 months since I signed those divorce papers with a confidence I didn't deserve. 6 months since I told her I couldn't do this, as if the universe would bend itself to my convenience. 6 months of convincing myself she would eventually choose the path I expected, terminate the pregnancy, move on, pretend none of it happened. But there she was, alive, glowing, pregnant, still carrying the baby I had walked away from. She didn't see me. Not at first. She was standing near a table of ripe peaches, one hand resting on her belly, the other brushing her hair behind her ear the way she always did when she was overwhelmed or tired. The early autumn sun hit her face, soft and warm, and for a moment the world just slowed. And I realized something horrifying. I had abandoned them. Not the idea of a child, not a theoretical responsibility them. A woman I once vowed to protect. A baby who had never asked to exist. And there, in that ordinary crowded place, surrounded by the smell of fruit and roasted coffee, guilt pinned me down harder than any courtroom sentence could have. My throat tightened. I wanted to walk to her, call her name, fall on my knees if I had to, but my legs wouldn't move. Instead, I watched a stranger step forward and offer to carry her bag. She smiled politely, thanked him softly. And I realized how long she must have been doing everything alone. My hands shook. I turned away, ashamed. Before everything fell apart, life with Claire had been steady, almost gentle. We lived in a small 2-bedroom condo just outside the city, white walls she kept threatening to repaint, a kitchen that always smelled like her cinnamon coffee, soft music playing on weekend mornings. She worked as a school counselor. I ran my own contracting business. Nothing dramatic, nothing wild. Just 2 people trying to build something ordinary and stable. But stability has a way of revealing the cracks you thought you'd never have to deal with. For years, we had both quietly assumed children would come later. Later when the business grew. Later when her work stress settled. Later when we felt ready, whatever that meant. Later was always safer than now. Then one evening, she came out of the bathroom, holding a small white stick with a trembling smile. "Nathan," she whispered, "I think I'm pregnant." My breath froze. Not from panic, not from joy, just shock. The kind of shock that reaches deep enough to expose every unspoken fear you've been storing. She sat beside me on the couch, her knee touching mine. I remember the faint smell of lavender from her lotion, the way her fingers kept brushing lightly over the test, as if afraid it would disappear. She wasn't glowing or triumphant. She was nervous, hopeful. "I know, it's sooner than we planned," she said quietly. "But I'm happy. Or at least, I want to be." He swallowed hard. I told myself I was just being practical, responsible, mature. But the truth was uglier. I was scared. Terrified of losing the life I controlled. Terrified of becoming my own father. A man who provided money but never presence. Terrified of failing before I even tried. So I said the worst thing I've ever said to anyone. "We should think about other options." Her face changed slowly, like watching a sunrise reverse into the night. She didn't cry. She just stared at me with a kind of quiet disbelief, as if she'd just recognized a stranger. That silence, God, that silence is the one thing I still hear in the middle of the night. But at that time, I convinced myself I was being realistic. That she would eventually agree. That keeping the baby would destroy everything we'd built. I didn't know then that it would be my choice, not the pregnancy that destroyed us. I should have noticed the shift sooner. Looking back, it wasn't one big moment. It was hundreds of small ones. Each one a quiet signal I ignored, because it was easier to pretend everything would return to normal. After that night, Claire became gentler with her words, but colder with her eyes. She stopped making coffee for both of us in the morning. She'd brew just 1 cup and leave the kitchen before I walked in. She started sleeping closer to the edge of the bed. She moved slower, quieter, as if trying not to disturb something fragile in the air between us. I told myself she needed space, that she'd come around, that she'd eventually agree with my practical point of view. One afternoon, I overheard her humming softly while washing dishes, an old lullaby her mother used to sing. It hit me strangely. I remember standing in the doorway, watching her. She wasn't smiling, but she looked peaceful, protective. The kind of expression a woman wears when she's already bonded to something she hasn't even held yet. In that moment, my chest tightened with a feeling I couldn't name. Fear, maybe, or envy, or the first flicker of realization that she wasn't waiting for my permission. But I buried it. I told myself, she'll choose me. She has to. A few weeks later, I noticed she started hiding things, not maliciously, but quietly. Her phone was always face down. She kept folded documents in her purse. She took long walks alone after dinner, one hand drifting to her stomach in a gesture that felt both tender and private. Once, when she returned from one of those walks, I asked casually, "Everything okay? You seem distant." She hesitated but gave a soft, polite smile. "I'm just thinking. That's all. Thinking. Planning. Preparing to be a mother with or without me." But I refused to see it. The real turning point came on a day that should have been ordinary. She came home from work looking exhausted. Her hair was damp from the rain, and her shoes were muddy. She walked straight past me and went into the bedroom. I waited a few minutes, then followed. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, her hands resting protectively on her stomach. I sat beside her. "Claire," I said slowly, "we need to talk about this." She didn't look at me. I know. I searched her face for anger or sadness, something to tell me she was still fighting for us. But she looked resolved. People think heartbreak comes with shouting or tears, but sometimes it comes with quiet acceptance. A soft exhale, a straightened spine. "What are you thinking?" I asked. "That I'm keeping the baby?" she said simply. My jaw tightened. "Claire, we said we weren't ready." "No," she cut in, finally turning to meet my eyes. "You said that." I never agreed. Her voice wasn't sharp, it was steady, painfully steady. "We can't afford this right now," I said. She closed her eyes briefly, like she'd rehearsed this moment. "Nathan, you run your own business. I have a stable job. We're not perfect, but we're not helpless." "We're not prepared," I insisted. She took a deep breath. "Parents rarely are." Something snapped inside me. Not anger, but panic, the deep-rooted kind that makes you cling to the illusion of control. "This isn't the right time," I said. "It's just a bad choice." Her expression slipped into something quiet and wounded. "A bad choice," she repeated, almost to herself. Silence stretched between us, long and heavy. Then she stood. "I've made my decision," she said softly. "And I'm not arguing with you anymore." Those words, polite, calm, final, terrified me more than shouting ever could. The divorce didn't happen immediately. It wasn't a dramatic explosion. It was a slow withdrawal, like someone turning down the dimmer switch on a room until you suddenly realize you're sitting in darkness. She stopped asking my opinion, stopped updating me on doctor visits, stopped reaching for my hand at night. One morning after another argument about practicality, she placed the divorce papers on the table between us. "This is the only way we can stop hurting each other," she whispered. I didn't argue. I told myself she was being emotional, impulsive, that she'd change her mind. But the truth I refused to face was that she wasn't leaving me. She was protecting our child from a father who didn't want them. And I signed the papers, thinking she'd eventually end the pregnancy on her own once the reality set in. I was wrong about everything. When I walked away from that signing table, I told myself I was the rational one. That Claire was acting on emotion, that motherhood had clouded her judgment, that she'd eventually come to see things the way I did. I clung to that belief like a lifeline, because the alternative that I was the one abandoning them was too heavy to carry. I moved into a small rented apartment closer to my construction sites. The place smelled like paint thinner and dust, and the hollow echo of my footsteps reminded me every day how empty I'd made my life. But I kept going, kept working, kept convincing myself I'd been right, until that day at the farmer's market shattered the delusion. Seeing Claire still pregnant, heavily pregnant, hit me with a force I can only describe as punishment. Not from her, from life, from the part of me I'd been refusing to confront. That night, I barely slept. I kept picturing her alone at doctor's appointments, carrying groceries with swollen feet, waking up nauseated with no one to hold her hair back. I imagined her lying in bed at night, one hand on her belly, whispering hopes to a child I had chosen to reject. By the next morning, the guilt was unbearable. I needed to find her. Not to win her back, not even to fix what I'd broken. I just needed to tell her the truth, that I'd been wrong, completely, shamefully wrong. But Claire had erased me from her world with quiet precision. She changed her number. She left our shared apartment long before I did. Her social media had gone still months ago. Mutual friends gave polite but tight-lipped answers, unwilling to involve themselves. I didn't blame them. After 2 days of searching, I finally drove to her sister's house. I sat in my truck for nearly 15 minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles hurt. The porch light was on. The curtains in the living room glowed warmly. Ordinary life continued in that house life I had willingly removed myself from. I forced myself to get out and not. Her sister, Maya, opened the door. She took one look at me and sighed. The kind of sigh people reserve for someone who's already caused enough damage. "Nathan," she said flatly, "what are you doing here?" "I need to talk to Claire," I said, voice tight. "Please. She doesn't want to see you." "I know, but I have to apologize." Her eyes narrowed. "Now? After all these months?" I swallowed the shame rising in my throat. "I saw her. At the market. I didn't know that she didn't end the pregnancy?" She crossed her arms. "Did you expect her to?" My voice cracked. "Yes, I did." She stared at me with a mixture of anger and pity. "Claire's not here," she finally said. "She's staying with a friend until the baby comes. She needed space. She needed peace." I nodded slowly, accepting the blow. But then Maya hesitated, just slightly. "Look, I'll tell her you came by," she said. "That's all I can promise." It was more than I deserved. Claire reached out 2 days later. I was sitting at the edge of my bed when her message appeared, a simple, cautious line. "I heard you're looking for me." "Why?" My hands shook as I typed back. "I owe you an apology. A real one. Can we talk?" She didn't agree, but she didn't refuse either. Instead, she sent an address and a time. When I arrived at the small duplex she was staying in, my breath caught. She opened the door slowly, her hand bracing her lower back, her belly full and round beneath her loose shirt. She looked tired, but strong, stronger than I'd ever seen her. Her eyes held no hatred, just distance. "What do you want, Nathan?" she asked gently. I didn't step inside. I didn't ask to. I stood on the porch, hands trembling, heart pounding. "I need to tell you I was wrong," I said quietly. "About everything. I was scared and selfish, and I hurt you. I'm sorry." Her eyes softened, but only slightly. The kind of softness that comes not from forgiveness, but from exhaustion. "I'm not looking for closure," she said. "And I'm not asking you to fix anything. I've learned to do this on my own." "I know," I whispered. "But I want to help now, if you'll let me." She studied me for a long, uncomfortable moment. Then she nodded once. "You can start by coming to the next appointment." Just like that, the door to redemption cracked open, but only enough for me to slip a single hand through, and I knew I couldn't waste the chance. I arrived 20 minutes early to the first appointment she allowed me to attend. My hands wouldn't stop sweating. My mind wouldn't stop replaying the moment she'd opened her door and looked at me like a man she used to know but no longer trusted. I didn't blame her. The fact that she let me show up at all felt like mercy I hadn't earned. When Claire walked into the waiting room, she moved slowly, one hand supporting her belly. She wore a soft gray maternity dress, her hair pulled back loosely. She didn't smile when she saw me, didn't frown either. She just gave a small nod. "You came," she said quietly. "I meant it," I replied. We sat together, but with a polite space between us. The room buzzed with soft chatter, hospital ventilation humming in the background. A nurse called her name. Claire hesitated, then looked at me. You're coming in, right? The fact that she even asked felt like a thread she was offering. Thin, fragile, but real. Inside the ultrasound room, the lights dimmed. Claire lay back on the bed, while the technician spread warm gel over her stomach. I stood near her feet, unsure where to put my hands, my heart pounding hard enough to hear it. Then the monitor flickered, and I heard it. A heartbeat. Fast, strong, steady like tiny fists, knocking on the door of a world that didn't deserve such innocence. My throat tightened, my vision blurred. I had seen men cry before at funerals, during deployments, after losing everything in a divorce, but nothing prepared me for the way tears rose the moment I saw that small shape on the screen. That's your daughter, the technician said gently. Daughter. The word broke me open. I glanced at Claire. She wasn't looking at the screen, she was looking at me. Watching the realization finally hit. Watching the man who had wanted to erase a life now stand trembling in front of it. For the first time, I saw a flicker of something in her expression that I hadn't seen in months. Not forgiveness, but relief. Relief that I was finally seeing what she had always known. After that day, I didn't miss a single appointment. Every ultrasound, every procedure, every checkup, I was there. Claire didn't make it easy. She didn't ask for favors. She didn't lean on me. But she let me show up, and that was enough. People noticed. Friends who once avoided eye contact with me began offering tight, careful greetings. Some couldn't hide their judgment. You really messed up, man, one old coworker said bluntly when he ran into us at the clinic. Better late than never, I guess. I nodded. I didn't defend myself. What defense could I possibly have? But the worst moment came when Claire's mother saw me in the hospital corridor. Her face froze, grief and anger tightening every line. I told her you'd come around, she said bitterly. But not because you grew a spine, because guilt finally caught up. I didn't respond. I just took the words. Maybe that was the beginning of my transformation, carrying the weight instead of handing it off. When the time came for labor, Claire called me. Not because we were together, not even because she trusted me fully, but because she knew our daughter deserved two parents witnessing her entry into the world. Those hours in the delivery room changed me. Watching Claire fight through pain, gripping the rails, biting back tears, I realized how small my fear had been compared to her courage. When Sophia was born, the room felt silent, even with her first cry echoing through it. The nurse placed her in Claire's arms for a moment, then asked who would cut the cord. Claire looked at me, and for the first time in a long while, I saw softness, not romantic, not nostalgic, just human. She nodded. You can do it, she whispered. My hands trembled as I cut the cord. A simple, clean cut. But everything inside me shifted. When I held Sophia for the first time, she felt impossibly light and infinitely important. Her tiny fingers curled around one of mine, and something inside me settled something that had been restless, broken, unfinished. I knew in that moment I would protect her with everything I had. I would never walk away again. Claire watched me holding our daughter, her expression unreadable but calm. For the first time, her guard loosened a little. You're doing good, she said quietly. Not we, not us, just you. And that was all I deserved. I used to think redemption was a moment, a dramatic apology, a grand gesture, one powerful act that erased everything before it. But real redemption turned out to be smaller, slower. 1,000 quiet choices, stacked day after day, until they formed something solid. After Sophia was born, I moved closer to Claire's neighborhood. Not into her space, she wasn't ready for that, but into a modest apartment 5 minutes away so I could be present without being intrusive. I rearranged my entire work schedule around feedings, doctor visits, diaper pickups, and the unpredictable rhythm of a newborn's needs. My crew learned quickly that I've got Sophia today meant I wasn't going anywhere. Claire didn't rush to include me. She watched, observed, tested gently. It's your night, she'd say, handing Sophia over with a diaper bag so organized it put my entire life to shame. Then she'd stand in the doorway for a moment, like she was giving me one last chance to back out. I didn't. I learned to warm bottles at exactly the right temperature, learned the difference between her hungry cry and her tired cry, learned how to rock her gently too slow and she fussed, too fast and she startled. I learned her smell, her tiny size, the weight of her against my chest during midnight feedings when the world fell silent. And slowly, so slowly, it was almost unnoticeable. Claire's posture softened when she handed Sophia to me. Her shoulders dropped a little. Her breaths didn't catch as sharply. She still didn't trust me completely, but she trusted the father I was becoming. That was enough. The public consequences didn't disappear overnight. People remembered. They whispered. They had opinions. At family gatherings, when Claire allowed me to attend for Sophia's sake, I felt the stares. Some disappointed, some furious, some simply confused at the transformation. Claire's father, a quiet man who rarely wasted words, approached me once after a holiday dinner. He stood beside me in the kitchen, drying a dish as I washed. "You hurt my daughter," he said calmly. "I know," I replied. "You abandoned your child." I swallowed. "I know." He paused, studying me with a measured gaze. "But I also see the man you're trying to be now." My hands stilled in the sink. He set the dish aside. "It doesn't erase what happened, but effort matters, consistency matters. People change when they want to." Those words stayed with me for years, not because they absolved me, but because they set the bar for the kind of man I needed to remain. Sophia grew fast. First smile, first laugh, first steps. Each milestone felt like a reward I didn't deserve but was grateful for anyway. Claire and I worked out a co-parenting schedule that prioritized Sophia above all else. We communicated about allergies, nap cycles, school enrollment, and which toys she outgrew. Sometimes we shared small achievements, a photo of her finger painting, a video of her babbling nonsense while eating yogurt. We weren't friends, but we weren't enemies either. We were something harder, something more intentional. Two people rebuilding a bridge plank by plank, knowing it would never look like the original, but could still carry the weight of what mattered. Over the years, Claire's caution never fully disappeared. She kept her boundaries firm. She didn't blur lines. She didn't give false hope. Occasionally, on a quiet evening during a handoff, I'd feel a brief flicker nostalgia. Maybe, but it faded as quickly as it came. She had moved on, not out of spite, but out of necessity. She deserved a life that wasn't shadowed by old wounds. And I deserved the truth. Our romantic relationship was gone, permanently. But the respect, the trust, those I was slowly earning through reliability, patience, and presence. The strongest moment of that newfound respect came when Sophia was about 7. We were at her school talent show. She had practiced her small piano piece for weeks. Her legs dangled off the stool, her little dress fanned around her like a flower. When she finished, the crowd clapped politely, parents, teachers, students. But Claire and I, we stood. Not because her performance was perfect, but because she was ours. Afterward, as Sophia ran ahead to show her ribbon to her friends, Claire walked beside me in the hallway. The faint hum of the auditorium still drifted behind us. She exhaled slowly and said, "You've become a good father, Nathan." Not begrudgingly, not cautiously, just honestly. I stopped walking, because that was the moment I'd been working toward, not reconciliation, not love returned, but recognition. "Thank you," I said quietly. "That means more than you know." She gave a small nod. "I know." And in that hallway, under the buzzing fluorescent lights, I finally felt a calm I hadn't felt in years, the kind that comes only when you've stopped running from your past and learned to carry its weight with dignity. We walked together toward the exit, our steps quiet, steady, two separate lives connected by the same heartbeat. And for once, the future didn't feel like a punishment. It felt like purpose. There are moments in a man's life when he realizes the person he used to be no longer exists. Sometimes that realization comes gently. Mine came like a tidal wave, loud, unforgiving, dragging every mistake to the surface. Losing Claire wasn't a punishment. It was the natural consequence of the choices I made. But earning back her respect, Earning my place in Sophia's life, that was the quiet redemption I didn't know I was capable of. I used to think love was about possession, partnership, promises, but fatherhood taught me something else. Love is responsibility. Love is consistency. Love is showing up even when the door opens, only an inch at a time. Claire and I will never be who we were, and that's okay. Some bonds aren't meant to be romantic again. Some are meant to be rebuilt into something steadier, something that holds up a child's world. When I watch Sophia run into her mother's arms, when we stand on opposite sides but support the same small life between us, I finally understand what matters. And now I ask you, if you were in my place, would you have had the strength to rebuild yourself piece by piece?